Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And today we're talking Gen Z and the craziness surrounding them.
Yes.
Also, if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. YouTube's
Something's happening. We're noticing something's happening because for like the past few months, we were like getting better, gaining subscribers, we were getting more views, and all of a sudden, around halfway through last month and then this month, it completely dropped off. And we're seeing it's not just us, it's a lot of other creators as well that are kind of getting not as many views as they were getting. And we know the algorithm changed. So, I mean, we know it's not just us being crazy.
Yeah, so the algorithm may have changed on YouTube and the other side as well. So if you can like and subscribe, it would really help get us out there.
Yes.
But do you want to get into the 20 minutes or do you want to talk Gen Z before?
Sure.
Sure.
Whatever you want. It's up to you. It's your life.
Well, Gen Z is drinking less than any other generation before it.
Yeah, which I'm not mad about, but the whole reasoning behind it might not be the best.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit, but let's get into the 20 minutes.
Sure.
Before you start, I have to press record on everything.
Okay, hang on. Let me know when.
Switch cameras so I can do it.
Okay.
Come on. Good.
Buenas noches, ¿cómo les va a todos? Aquí estamos seguimos haciendo pruebas, seguimos viendo qué funciona y qué no, y como comentamos ahorita en inglés, por alguna razón los algoritmos como que enloquecieron. Sabemos que YouTube cambió el algoritmo y pasamos de por lo menos tener unas 1000 vistas por video que sacábamos, ahora andamos en los 200 y veo que muchos otros creadores también están teniendo el mismo problema. Entonces, por favor, por ahora, si nos quieren apoyar, lo mejor que pueden hacer es compartir los videos que les gusten y suscribirse y darle like, no solo a los en vivos, pero también en videos, porque eso es lo que más ayuda ahora, al parecer. Nos están cambiando la jugada cada rato, pero bueno, pues, ¿qué se le va a hacer? Nada más se puede seguir continuando. Y de lo que quiero hablar es sobre una esgrimista que se negó a participar en un torneo contra un contrincante trans, y toda una polémica que se ha armado por las reglas que tiene la Asociación de Esgrima en Estados Unidos y también por lo que dicen muchos atletas, en especial atletas femeninas, que dicen que por fin alguien y por fin muchas jovencitas, muchas chavas están decidiendo por fin decir, no, ya no vamos a seguir con esta locura de seguirle este jueguito de enredos mentales a hombres que creen y dicen ser mujeres, pero que todavía tienen muchas ventajas biológicas por encima de nosotros. Entonces, veamos primero la historia y también ayuda a contextualizar un poco toda la situación sobre lo que está pasando en el mundo trans, lo que ha pasado ahora que Donald Trump está en la Casa Blanca, y también pues qué puede venir hacia países como en Latinoamérica, como México, y varias reglas nuevas que han estado empezando a sacar, pero que muy silenciosamente, entonces la gente pues no se entera realmente. Pero primero veamos lo que pasó con esta esgrimista. Dice, polémica, esgrimista se niega a competir contra atleta trans y la sancionan. Sancionaron a la mujer biológica que decidió no poner su vida en riesgo, o por lo menos su competencia en riesgo, al decir, no quiero competir en contra de alguien que es un hombre biológico, no importa cuánto maquillaje se ponga, no importa cuánto algodón se mete en el brasier que trae puesto, no voy a competir contra esta persona. Y se ha armado una polémica, obviamente en Estados Unidos, y sabemos que, y ahorita voy con el artículo, pero sabemos que justamente cuando entró Donald Trump, uno de los puntos más importantes de las primeras cosas que quería hacer era empezar a sacar a hombres biológicos de deportes femeninos por el riesgo que conlleva no solo seguirle el jueguito a alguien que tiene, pues sí, una enfermedad mental que fue considerada por muchos años una enfermedad mental hasta hace muy pocos años, pero también lo que pasa con el hecho de que biológicamente son mucho más fuertes, tienen una capacidad pulmonar, por ejemplo, mucho más por encima de la capacidad pulmonar de las mujeres, tienen formas de hacer más músculo y volverse más musculosos y usar sus músculos de forma diferente que las mujeres. Entonces, tienen una ventaja biológica que por muchísimo tiempo mucha gente estaba tratando de hacerle como que pues no, en cuanto dices que eres mujer y todas esas realidades biológicas se pierden y ya no existen. Pero ahora, por fin, y yo durante mucho tiempo, junto con Guy, pero en este canal en especial, he hablado, por ejemplo, de Riley Gaines, esta nadadora que decidió no competir en contra de un nadador trans que se hace llamar Lia Thomas y dijo, al final no voy a competir, después de que en una competencia pasada habían casi empatado ella y este hombre y le terminaron dando el trofeo y teniendo que tomarle la foto con el trofeo al hombre, nada más por óptica, a este señor que se hace llamar Lia Thomas. Ella ha hablado en contra de esto, pero se tarda por miedo y por las repercusiones que hay y que vemos aquí, obviamente, por miedo, por mucho tiempo, varios años, desde que empezó toda esta locura de inclusión y de incluir a cualquiera que dijera que fuera mujer en torneos femeninos, en deportes femeninos, en especial en deportes de contacto, por ejemplo, donde existe un riesgo aún mayor, más allá de de la desventaja competitiva que le dan a las mujeres, pero riesgos físicos, de salud. Vimos también en un torneo de voleibol me parece que fue niñas que están en la universidad, vimos que como había un hombre en un equipo, un hombre que se dice mujer en el equipo opuesto, cuando, no sé cómo se dice de los términos de voleibol, pero cuando le pegó a la pelota, terminó pegándole a una de sus oponentes que acabó cayéndose al piso con una contusión y con problemas de la columna que la dejaron pues con bastantes repercusiones, con bastantes secuelas y estuvo en silla de ruedas por muchísimo tiempo y teniendo que hacer terapia física por el nivel de fuerza que tenía este cabrón que se hacía llamar mujer y que estaba jugando en contra de otras mujeres en un deporte de contacto. Entonces, sí, es entendible que durante mucho tiempo muchas mujeres que habían hecho de su vida el deporte y que tenían mucha esperanza de tener, por ejemplo, las oportunidades que dan en Estados Unidos, en Canadá, con todas estas colegiaturas, becas, si es que ganas o si es que te vuelves alguien muy importante en el deporte cuando estás en la secundaria, en la prepa y después en la universidad. Todo eso te da ventajas, pero en cuanto empezaron a entrar hombres que se decían mujeres, o sea, mujeres trans, que tal cosa no existe, a estos deportes y a tratar de también figurar en estas competencias solo para que en su enredo mental pues también fueran aceptados y el mayor problema y la forma en la que lo querían hacer y la razón por la cual querían ser admitidos en todos estos deportes eran pues básicamente para que alguien más en la sociedad les dijera como sí, tú eres mujer y te vamos a admitir como mujer, y todo por seguirle el jueguito, enredo mental que traen. Muchas mujeres perdieron oportunidades, muchas mujeres terminaron lesionadas y muchas mujeres terminaron completamente desilusionadas, no solo con el deporte al que dedicaron su vida, pero también con las asociaciones que se suponía que tenían que protegerlas, las universidades a las que iban, que también se suponía que deberían de protegerlas. Muchas veces, y vimos en el caso de Riley Gaines y de otras mujeres que competían en natación, que en vez de tratar de aceptar que se sentían incómodas con tener un hombre biológico, con las partes todavía colgando, digamos, en sus cambiadores, y mientras estaban cambiando, poniéndose trajes de baño, y pues es un espacio, se supone, íntimo y seguro para las mujeres, lo que son los cambiadores antes de entrar a la competencia. La universidad, cuando se quejaron de que tenían que estar interactuando con este ser humano con partes colgantes dentro de sus cambiadores, les dijo, no, ustedes son las que están mal, ustedes deberían de ir a terapia para poder entender y admitir por qué es importante abrirle su espacio pues, personal y literalmente las partes más privadas que tiene una mujer a este hombre que se cree mujer solo por seguirle su enredo mental y sus problemas mentales, que al final de cuentas es lo que es, porque si no sientes que tu cuerpo va con tu mente, pues hay algo ahí que no está bien, ¿verdad? Si no, todos andaríamos cambiando de género así nada más porque sí, y que sí, vemos que cada día más pasa que más y más gente decide de la nada que sería más fácil ser el género opuesto. Pero bueno, ahora sí a la historia. Esgrimista se niega a competir contra atleta trans y la sancionan. Una vez más, esta es una de las razones y da más razón para ver por qué atletas mujeres, atletas femeninas no se han negado a competir varias veces cuando lo deberían de haber hecho, y es por el miedo de pues que se les caiga todo lo que han construido a lo largo de años y años y años de esfuerzo, que muy pocos de nosotros podemos entender cuánto esfuerzo toma llegar a los niveles en los que están muchos de estos atletas en competencias pues bastante elevadas. Pero Stephanie Turner, integrante de la Academia de Esgrima de Filadelfia, fue expulsada de un torneo en Estados Unidos después de que se negó a enfrentarse a un competidor, aquí pusieron una competidora transgénero, lo que generó una furia generalizada por parte de personalidades del mundo del esgrima que calificaron la descalificación de Turner como una injusticia, que lo es, pero la Asociación de Esgrima con la que estaba compitiendo dijo, te vamos a castigar a ti y le vamos a dar la razón a este hombre con problemas mentales. Entre las voces que se llevaron en contra de la expulsión de Turner estuvieron la leyenda del tenis Martina Navratilova, quien escribió en redes sociales: esto es lo que pasa cuando los atletas protestan. ¿Alguien aquí todavía piensa que esto es justo? Estoy furiosa y qué vergüenza debería darles a USA Fencing, qué vergüenza debería darles por hacer esto, cómo se atreven a echar por la tierra a las mujeres con las mentiras de género. Y Martina ha sido una de esas figuras que al final sí por fin salieron a hablar en contra de esto por mucho tiempo y pues sí, es básicamente un cartel de activistas trans. Muchos, hasta figuras públicas, tuvieron mucho miedo de salir a hablar en contra porque vieron las consecuencias de lo que le pasaba a la gente normal que hablaba en contra, no solo de las cancelaciones, pero despidos, justamente sacarlas de torneos, quitarles medallas, quitarles oportunidades. Entonces se tardaron, pero por fin empezaron a hablar. Y con Trump prohibiendo el hecho de que atletas trans participen en deportes, ya sea universitarios y en secundaria y prepa, pues ha cambiado mucho el ambiente, por lo menos en Estados Unidos, pero no en el resto del mundo, y se sigue viendo en Canadá. De allá venimos de Vancouver, donde la locura está ahora sí que rebasada, y yo creo que de ahí sale mucho de esto, todas estas ideas locas. Y criticó la forma en la que los medios abordan el tema, porque también obviamente los medios tienen muchísimo miedo de hablar sobre esto. Y dice el titular, debería decir: esgrimista descalificada tras negarse a competir contra un hombre, que es cierto, porque es un hombre biológico, por más que lo quiera negar, que se identifica como trans. Y luego una esgrimista de la NCAA, que es esta asociación de competencia entre universidades y que regula la asociación que regula los deportes universitarios y las competencias universitarias. Dice: como esgrimista retirada de la División 1 de la NCAA, esta es Juliana Peselli, me vi obligada a competir contra hombres que desean ser mujeres, o sea, esto ya lleva tiempo. Los atletas dedicamos nuestras vidas a nuestro deporte solo para que los hombres, las atletas, nos arrebaten nuestros puestos, nuestros títulos y nuestro futuro, y así ha sido. Y qué bueno, y dice: felicitaciones a las mujeres que se niegan a aceptar esta injusticia. Y por mucho tiempo, era lo que estaba diciendo antes, tanto Guy como yo, pero yo en especial, he hablado sobre la necesidad de que más y más mujeres atletas pues dijeran algo, y o sea, que recaía en ellas al final del día, porque ellas son las únicas que pueden hablar desde la experiencia y negarse a competir contra alguien, pero eso también significa perder muchísimas oportunidades. Pero ahora que vemos que pues cambió la administración, se cambiaron el chip básicamente en todos lados, y que Trump puso sanciones a cualquier universidad o escuela que se niegue o que decida seguir dejando que hombres o niños que dicen ser mujeres participen en estos deportes, pues vemos que ha cambiado bastante el ambiente, pero no lo suficiente, porque pues sigue pasando. ¿Qué pasó entre Stephanie Turner y el atleta trans Redmond Sullivan? Stephanie Turner se negó a competir contra el atleta trans Redmond Sullivan en el torneo Cherry Blossom Open en Maryland el fin de semana pasado, debido a que, según dijo la cadena de noticias Fox News, la USA Fencing no había escuchado las objeciones de mujeres con respecto a su política de la elegibilidad de género. Y una vez más, esto lleva cargando años y con muchísima gente tratando de protestar en contra, de decir que están incómodas, de decir que no lo quieren hacer, pero las asociaciones pues se hacen de la vista gorda, no ven que haya nada diferente en uno de los competidores a quien le cuelgan cosas, y dicen: no, pues si es mujer, pues es lo que tenemos que decir, tenemos que ser inclusivos, tenemos que ser diversos. Hubo un video donde se prepara para el duelo y se arranca la máscara y la tira a un lado y se arrodilla frente a su oponente, y no entendía lo que pasaba este hombre trans. Primero ella volteó a ver al árbitro y le dijo: lo siento, no puedo hacer esto, soy mujer, este es un hombre y este es un torneo femenino, no voy a esgrimir a esta persona. Y después, pues, el atleta trans la escuchó y le preguntó primero cómo estás bien, porque no sabía si estaba lastimada o si algo le había pasado. Pero en cuanto ella le dijo, lo siento, te quiero y respeto mucho, pero no te voy a esgrimir. Lo que dijo a consecuencia este hombre que se cree mujer fue, bueno, sabes, hay un miembro de la junta directiva que me apoya y hay una política que me reconoce como mujer, así que puedo esgrimir y te van a sacar la tarjeta negra. Y es muy chistoso como en cuanto hay algún problemita o en cuanto hay alguien que no les da por su gusto a todos estos hombres que se creen mujeres, rapidísimo les sale el lado más masculino y les sale más el lado peleonero que pues traen ahí adentro porque de ahí vienen. Tras esta escena, el árbitro mostró a Turner la tarjeta negra y indicaba una grave infracción a las reglas o comportamiento antideportivo. El comportamiento antideportivo es dejar que un hombre con muchísimas más ventajas biológicas se ponga a competir contra mujeres pues, que además se ven en estatura mucho más chiquitas. Y Turner podía enfrentar consecuencias por su decisión. Siento que con mucha gente saliendo a apoyarla, esperemos que no. Y pues esto podría llegar hasta la Casa Blanca, porque pues justamente una de las primeras órdenes ejecutivas que firmó Trump fue sobre no dejar para que hombres no se pusieran a competir contra mujeres, pero de acuerdo con la esgrimista, es posible que hubiera consecuencias por su decisión de no competir contra un oponente transgénero. Probablemente, al menos por un momento, me destroce la vida. No creo que me resulte fácil ir a torneos de esgrima de ahora en adelante. No creo que me resulte fácil entrenar. Es muy difícil para mí hacer esto. ¿Y qué dijo USA Fencing, esta asociación que decía este güey trans que tenía el respaldo de esta asociación? La USA Fencing dijo que su política de atletas no binarias fue diseñado para ampliar el acceso al deporte de la esgrima y crear espacios inclusivos y seguros. Sí, muy seguro tener a alguien con una espadita, con un palito que pica, que pues puede causar algo de daño por lo menos, con mucha más fuerza que la persona con la que está compitiendo, picándole, ¿qué podría pasar? ¿Quién sabe? Y vemos que en deportes de contacto es donde más peligro hay que hayan estos hombres compitiendo con todas sus ventajas biológicas. Entonces, no es inclusivo y no es seguro. Y dijo, respetamos los puntos de vista de todos, pero pues les damos tarjeta negra y los sacamos del torneo. Y animamos a nuestros miembros a que sigan compartiéndolos con nosotros a medida que el asunto evolucione. Debería de evolucionar al punto de que regresen a admitir que la biología y la evolución son reales. Es importante que la comunidad de esgrima participe en este diálogo, aunque pues la sacamos y que se calle y tarjeta negra y no puedes volver a competir. Además, la USA Fencing dijo que a la revista Newsweek que la descalificación de Turner no estaba relacionada con ninguna declaración personal, sino el resultado directo de su decisión de negarse a esgrimir con un oponente elegible. El problema es que el oponente no es elegible, el oponente es un güey. Algo que quería también notar, y justamente que estaba hablando sobre Riley Gaines, obviamente dijo algo sobre el tema, traduje tweet, bueno, X o como les digan hoy en día, y dijo, así que puso lo que dijo Stephanie Turner y dijo, realmente se puede explicar esto simplemente increíble. Y pues sí, aquí vemos rápido la foto de la esgrimista que se negó y ella arrodillándose ante el referí, ¿se dice referí? Bueno, ante la persona que checa todo. Y pues es una imagen bastante fuerte porque es una mujer arrodillándose y pidiéndole apoyo a un hombre para que no tenga que irse a pelear literalmente en contra de otro hombre. Entonces, para todas las feministas que apoyan a todas estas personas, hombres que se creen mujeres, pues ahí tienen el resultado de mujeres que terminan lastimadas y que terminan perdiendo muchísimas oportunidades y por las cuales han luchado toda su vida. Rápidamente también quería mencionar a Billboard Chris y nada más porque comparto básicamente muchísimas opiniones con él en torno a todo este tema. Mi opinión sobre las personas adultas trans, aquí rápido podemos ver el video que quería mostrar sobre el momento, a ver si funciona, protesta histórica, y aquí vemos a la señorita que se negó a irse en contra de este esgrimista hombre, que vemos la diferencia en talla, vemos la diferencia en composición corporal, y ahí está cuando dijo, no lo voy a hacer, tiró su mascarilla y dijo, no voy a participar, y básicamente diciéndole al referí, lo voy a decir referí, no sé cómo se diga, que pues la ayude y que no piensa participar en contra de este hombre que claramente, vean, hasta sale ahí la cosita colgante, aunque sé que usan copa, pero hasta las mujeres usan copa, pero de todas maneras, ahí es cuando se acerca, le dice, pues estás bien, estás lastimada, y luego vemos cómo se le pone al brinco y le sale su lado masculino, ahí tratando de escucharla, y justo vamos a ver que después dice, a eso vas, bueno, pues no, o sea, a mí me apoyan, y ahí se puso con su tonito. Pero bueno, quería rápidamente poner el video porque si no, pues, ¿de qué sirve? Hablar sobre todo esto, pero con lo de Bill Chris, si no saben quién es Bill Chris, es un activista que está en contra de la transición para menores de edad, cuya opinión comparto completamente. Si es alguien adulto que decide ponerse, cortarse, quitarse, decirse como quiera que decirse o creerse lo que se quiera creer, está perfecto mientras no afecte a terceros y mientras no obligue a las demás personas a romper con la realidad o con con la realidad de veras, o con sus morales y valores que traen definidos, y no obligar, por ejemplo, a usar pronombres, no hacer leyes que te castiguen por no usar pronombres, por ejemplo. Estoy en contra de todo eso, pero si alguien quiere hacer lo que quiera hacer con su propio cuerpo, adelante, nada más no obliguen a las demás personas a seguirte el jueguito. Tienes que entender que si la gente no quiere irse con lo que estás diciendo, que está bien, tú síguele, tú sé fabuloso, fabulosa, lo que quieras hacer, y ya. Pero con menores de edad es donde está el problema para mí, y justamente cualquier persona que sea de la comunidad, que se crea hombre, mujer, se crea lo que se crea, que empiece a obligar a menores de edad a también seguirles el jueguito, a darles toda esta propaganda, a decirles que también tal vez ellos tienen el mismo problema cuando ni lo habían pensado. Todo eso y la transición de menores, ahí es donde está el problema, pero también en negar la realidad y en tratar de forzar al resto del mundo a hacerles caso, porque muchas veces hay consecuencias negativas de las cuales no quieren hablar. Y ahorita pues ya me voy, pero también quería hacer un video sobre un estudio que salió, y ahorita ya estoy alargando bastante este video, pero un estudio que salió sobre las consecuencias reales que hay después de la transición, y que toda esta cuento de que la gente después de que transiciona mejora mentalmente y se vuelven mucho más felices, no es cierto, y ha sido una mentira que ha sido propagada desde hace años, en parte por una asociación que se llama WPATH, que es una de las organizaciones más corruptas, pero que avalan y es en lo que se basan muchos doctores para recomendar la afirmación de género y también la transición. Pero eso queda para otro día. Por ahora, vámonos. Muchas gracias por ver este cachito, y seguiremos hablando sobre este tema porque obviamente van a seguir saliendo historias sobre todos estos tipos de temas que pues nos hacen tratar de regresar a la realidad por lo menos, y es importante hablar porque entre más gente hable, menos miedo hay, y vemos a más personas valientes como Stephanie Turner saliendo a decir hasta aquí, ya basta. Entonces, por ahora, aquí se queda el tema, pero hay mucho más hilo de donde jalar. Gracias. Y ahora me tengo que esperar porque ese fue el segmento que vamos a cortar. Gracias a todos los que siguen por acá. A ver, espérenme. Vamos a ver si alguien ha comentado. Sí, ha comentado bastante gente. Ok. Le tengo que parar a la grabación. Espérenme que me tengo que cambiar esta cámara porque si no, no sale lo de que siguen los 15 minutos que ya no sé cuántos minutos llevo. Pero Walker dice, no veo mi mensaje, es demasiado complicado comentar de estos temas. Exactamente. Maui Yoga Wellness dice, crueldad por donde lo veas. Aceptar esas competencias es literalmente estar dispuestos a ver un cruel desvivimiento terrible. Y porque no puedo decir esa palabra, creo, en YouTube, pero MASCRE. MASACRE, ya ni puedo deletrear. Pero sí, exactamente. Diplomatic Jax dice, ¿cuánto tiempo pasará para que esta ideología también influya en la biología? Digo, porque he visto que todas las disciplinas académicas se han ido plegando a esto. Los historiadores queer, por ejemplo, exactamente, y mucho recae en cambiar la historia, no solamente con este tema, con muchos de los temas progress, woke, donde están tratando de pues reinventar literalmente cosas históricas que han pasado. Temas biológicos también hemos visto que han tratado de sacar papers académicos o investigaciones académicas donde dicen que biológicamente cualquiera que empiece a tomar hormonas sí puede cambiar su ADN. Obviamente, eventualmente sacaron ese paper de la publicación y es que se está moviendo cámaras. Rápidamente, cuando se dieron cuenta de lo que estaban diciendo los autores, obviamente activistas queer, trans, como les quieran decir, se dieron cuenta, creo que era el Journal of Science, uno de esos, periódico académico, publicación académica donde se publican todas estas investigaciones, y en cuanto se dieron cuenta que estaban diciendo que literalmente solo con tomar hormonas alguien podía cambiar su ADN, lo sacaron, pero lo usaron no solo para, por ejemplo, publicar artículos diciendo que acaban de descubrir que sí se puede, pero también para otras publicaciones, obviamente también de investigadores académicos, activistas queer, y también tuvieron que retractarse eventualmente, pero pues sí, a una mujer pero que se viste más como hombre o hasta que se cree hombre, rápidamente un niñito de 3, 4, 5 años que no tienen pelos en la boca porque no tienen filtro, van y dicen como, ay, eres una mujer, pero ¿por qué te ves como que estás vestida como hombre? O sea, sí saben, la gente sabe, y literalmente todo se ha vuelto por ser respetuosos, ser cordiales, no ofender, pero adentro se sabe, o sea, es muy fácil distinguir quién sí es y quién no es y quién está aparentando, y se ve muy rápido en el cuerpo y está bien, pero bueno, Diplomatic Jax dice, eso decirle a los menores que quizá también sean metabots, me suena que la izquierda le dice a las personas con la conciencia de clase. Me suena a lo que la izquierda le dice a las personas con la conciencia de clase. O sea, como decir que tenemos que hablar sobre las clases sociales y es lo que dicen ellos. No sé si entendí súper bien el comentario, pero... ¿Qué?
Other camera.
Ay, ¿por qué? Bueno.
That one's, yeah.
Ok. Pero gracias, Diplomatic Jax. Ahora sí ya vámonos con inglés porque si no, no me callo. Sí... Ven que no está funcionando el en vivo porque me está diciendo que puede haber errores ahorita. Avísenme, espero que sí funcione, pero si no, pues ya veremos qué hablar. Y ahorita nos vamos a hablar sobre la generación Z, todas las nuevas locuras que traen. Cada generación trae locuras. También me quejo horrible sobre los millennials. Y sobre los que iban antes, los de los 80s, ya ni me acuerdo, generación X. Entonces todas las generaciones tienen problemas, pero hablemos sobre la generación Z porque son los que ahorita tienen el foco, básicamente, por varias cosas que han estado haciendo y decidiendo. Pero muchas gracias y ahora sí vámonos con inglés. Si ya no hay más comentarios, déjame ver. No, creo que no, entonces... There we go.
Great job on the opener there.
Thank you.
And thank you for everybody that did like, because we usually don't ask for likes and subscriptions.
Asking for likes.
But man, every single person that watched seemed like they give us a like. So thank you.
It does help. It does help, especially with the YouTube overlords that love to mess around with people's work.
Yeah, it's strange because YouTube's an American company and the American culture starting to go conservative, but here in Mexico, it's still extremely liberal and progressive, I would say. So the government may have a hand in conservative content. I don't know. Okay.
Maybe they wish they did. I don't think the government can be that influential.
Well, in Brazil they are.
Over American yes, because they tell them to go away, because they don't allow the companies to even be in the country. But Mexico, I don't think, would ever dare, hopefully, to do that. They dare to do it with their own institutions, but not with outside institutions. But yes, let's go into the first one.
Yeah, let's go into actually our top 3 stories were supposed to be last night. They're all 3 about Gen Z, and it's kind of painting an overall picture of what's going on in the minds of Gen Z, I guess.
Yeah, and it's which we know so much about.
And it's an important generation because it's really the next generation that's going to dictate the future of of the country. The boomers
of several countries.
The boomers are kind
not
of
just the
phasing out.
States.
We know Gen Alpha is going a lot more conservative, and they got their heads on their shoulders pretty good. But
Ish. A lot of them are stupid and spend too much money on Sephora products. So I mean, there's here. It's neither here nor there, but
I think a lot
the
of
trend.
a lot of propaganda has
yeah.
been propped into Gen Z, so I'm hoping they can break free of that propaganda. We'll see what happens. But the first story is why Gen Z is drinking less than any other generation.
Yes, and I mean, it doesn't really matter where we grab it from, but this is from. Oh my God, I hate it when they do this. Don't want to sign up for your newsletter. Don't care about your newsletter. Hold on. Because it's going to, there we go. It's going to bother me the whole time. Okay. As Dry January begins, this is from the start of this year, but it doesn't matter where we grab the article from because it's just a concept. There's one generation that has already begun cutting back on alcohol, Gen Z. Data from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, and this is mostly pertaining to the U.S. and Canada, because in Mexico I know the trend is different, indicates that alcohol consumption in the U.S. has risen overall, but research from the National Institute on Drug Abuse shows that lifetime drinking, I can't say that word, past month drinking and past year drinking among young people began to decline around the year 2000. That means that such declines have especially impacted Gen Z, defined as anybody born from 1997 to 2012, and some millennials born between 1981 and 1996. A survey from Gallup from 2023 found that the share of adults under 35 who say they ever drink dropped 10 percentage points in 2 decades from 62% to 72 back in 2001-2003.
Yeah, this is a great trend that's happening. The issue is, why is it happening? And is there underlying actual problems there? Me and you haven't drank for quite a long
Full
long
disclosure,
time.
we're both sober. I'm about 9.5 years in, so I haven't drank for 9.5 years for good reason, and I'm really glad I chose that for myself and you as well for a long time now.
Yeah, like 5 or 6 years, not quite as long as you.
No.
But
I realized where my life would lead.
For me,
it wasn't good.
Was the best decision I ever made,
Yes.
and you really helped me through that. But let's get back to Gen Z here, and a lot of this has to do with Gen Z being an antisocial generation, not liking to socialize as much as previous generations. So they're kind of checking out. And you normally go to social events, and if you were a well-adjusted drinker, you would primarily just drink at social events, I guess.
Yeah.
But Gen Z is not doing that. They're more staying at home, using THC, pens, porn, other forms. Corn.
They're declining to participate in a lot of the things that older generations saw as, normal and as rewarding. To them, it doesn't feel as rewarding. And I think it has a little bit to do also with the fact that millennials, for example, they did grow up with the technology, but it was technology that was quickly evolving, and they had at least a few years or a little bit of time where they didn't really depend on and have technology on them 24/7. With Gen Z, and now even more Gen Alpha, we see that the trend has led them to always be connected, and it has become part of their lives. They don't really remember a time when they didn't have a computer, they didn't have a phone, they didn't know how to use a TV. So it is, even though they're very close together, millennials and Gen Z, and millennials also suck, don't worry. Even though they're very close together, Gen Z really was the first time that they don't understand what it's like to live without technology.
Well, and I think social media has a lot to do with this. This generation is very, they want to be Instagram ready, have Instagram pictures, so they're going to the gym more, but also everybody has a phone now. So when you're at the bar acting the fool, or you're out at a nightclub acting the fool, you're probably going to end up on video. Maybe your friends, but maybe people you don't know. So they're much more socially aware. I think social media has really had an impact on this as well. They may be not socializing it as much in real life, but social media is kind of.
But my question is how much is social media actually socializing?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not true. It's not It's not a true socialization.
Yeah.
Very often it's a false image of who you are.
Yeah, and I mean, being in isolation and living in that sort of context of not being 100% in contact with someone in person can also lead you to be scared of ever being in that situation, because you've become so used to relying on having a filter basically between you and the outside world. But also Gen Z was one of those generations that had a lot of helicopter parents, a lot of you're doing great no matter what you do. Be yourself, but you can be whatever you want to be. Everybody, you can make nothing wrong. You will always be successful, even though they're not, or they've always been encouraged a little bit too much, I think. Same as millennials.
Well, I was going to say something. It almost slipped my mind now, but yeah. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure if this is a good trend. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, you said in Mexico you think it's a different trend.
Well, in Mexico, drinking culture, I think, from what I remember when I used to live here, is a little bit more ingrained within society, I think. And kids start drinking a lot younger, even though it's not technically allowed. Everybody finds a way. There's less restrictions, and I feel like more and less stigma, funnily enough, because there is less stigma on teenagers, drinking and stuff, but at the same time, there's a huge stigma on talking about any kind of issues somebody might have with alcohol or with substance abuse. So it's less talked about, and I think, from what I see, and from videos on social media, and what happened with that young lady that decided to try to take the life of another one because she was jealous of her dating her ex. They were at a party, and the videos you see, and they were very privileged children, but the videos you see from before where they were both getting violent, both girls with each other, they were obviously heavily drinking, and I think the culture here, people still interact a bit more.
Well, yeah.
Less so than when I was younger, but they still, go out. But it's still a thing.
The trend I see not only here, because I do walk by a lot of bars here and there, so I get to see the crowds and how they ebb and flow. And it's very similar to Canada. This generation, I've been a bouncer in bars for over 20 years, and the trend is the younger generations like to binge drink. They don't like to go out after work during the weekdays, but the bars and nightclubs get absolutely packed, and they love to binge drink to the point they're just blacked out drunk. And they don't know how to, what you'd say, slow themselves down when they drink. They just go until they're blacked out drunk very often.
Yeah, and that happens, and I did see it a lot in college in Canada, especially with Canadians and Americans. Mexicans kind of do. Well, I don't include myself in that, but they do.
The worst was Asian people, because they have a gene where they can't drink as much. So they would come in, they would have about 5 drinks, and next thing you know, I couldn't kick them out because the bar's responsible for anybody they kick out that's drunk. So I would have to call an ambulance, and their friends would have to carry them out to the ambulance very often.
Yeah, but I think here that happens a bit more during high school, like the blackouts and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then in college, yes, it still happens, but I think because there's a culture of drinking when you're younger, they don't go as hard as well, and it's not seen as this prohibited substance, even though a lot of Americans still get their hands on it. But the main issue is the lack of, the fear, I think, that has been instilled either on purpose or not on Gen Z of stepping outside, and of not keeping up appearances on their Instagrams or their TikToks, or not having as many likes, etc. Focusing so much on social media that they lose and completely forget what it's like being a real person. And I was talking about this yesterday with emotions, especially with the youngest generation. It's one of the most, Gen Z is one, and millennials, but Gen Z is one of the most medicated generations, either ADHD or antidepressant pills, or,
Well, alcohol doesn't mix with that very often.
It doesn't mix well with that, and it can also be used as a medicine, as a trying to treat yourself within itself.
You're also seeing a transition over to THC, because a lot of Western countries are legalizing THC.
Yeah, but what I was going to say with emotions is that because everybody's always looking at the best bits of people's online lives, they think that they should feel like that 24/7, and they should be achieving the exact same things that they see influencers or even their friends at their best moments achieving, when in reality it's normal to have human emotions. If you're sad for a day or two, you're not depressed, you're having an emotion, and it's hard to explain it to the younger generation. I worked in a high school, 2 high schools in Vancouver for a little bit, and it is very difficult to explain to the younger generation that feeling sad for a day or two is normal. Everybody feels sad, not everybody's happy 100% of the time, but interacting with that generation, it is also, when I was working at the schools, it's also interesting to see how despondent they can get, because that's how they interact online, and they think that it translates to the real world, but it doesn't.
Well, they don't know the new.
So you have to tell them, you can't react like that. You can't talk like that to other people.
The newer generation don't know how to interact with negative emotions, and their parents aren't really teaching them. They're always taught happiness is the way. So they're always doing things that make them feel good, and negative emotions they just don't know how to process all the time, and they very often turn towards antidepressants. And with this medicated culture, doctors prescribe antidepressants so quickly, and it's really building a weak generation. You need a generation that knows how to deal with negative emotions and depression on their own, how to self-regulate through food and exercise. But maybe we go to the next portion of the Gen Z.
Yes, and apparently there's an issue with our audio. It's lagging. And I did say earlier that YouTube warned me that there was something wrong with the connection. It's been happening these past few days. So let me know if it gets better or worse, please. But thank you for letting us know, Maui Yoga and Wellness.
Yeah, the YouTube's been a little bit messed up on a lot of levels lately.
Yes.
So, but the next story involves Gen Z, and this was actually my favorite. So I'm hoping we have some clips. But this is what is a man repeller outfit. Young women are driving fashion trends, not for the male gaze.
Yes. So basically, it's women now deciding that the best thing they can do to combat the patriarchy, once again, is to dress in ways that men will not find attractive.
Well, it's not just dress ways. It's anything fashionable. So their eyebrows, bleaching.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate those trends.
Bleaching their eyebrows, extremely thick caterpillar eyebrows.
Yes. Does any man think that looks good? Because I see it all the time. Well, even influencers and really girls that guys usually look up to have these giant eyebrows, and that they put up, they make their hairs go up like a caterpillar.
Yeah, it's called feminism.
But I think they think men like that. I think they think men like that.
At one point they were trying to get a unibrow trend going because people were painting on fake unibrows. It didn't totally catch on, but those thick eyebrows are still a trend. But even the outfits are absolutely crazy. Why don't you read some of the article, and then we'll get into talking about it.
So in 2023, model and New York it girl, I have no idea why, Julia Fox, if you know who she is, she's insufferable, went on BBC Radio 4 Women's Hour, and she said, "Men hate my outfits. They're so mad that I'm not hot how I was on Uncut Gems." Show. Fox's words have since become something of a siren call for young women, helping to prompt a rediscovery of a certain trend from the 2010s called the man repeller outfit. 2 years after the comments on Fox, as the political divide between men and women continues to deepen, young women are driving the revival of the man repeller trend. And what is the man repeller outfit? The term man repeller was publicized, so basically it's a way to dress how you think men won't like you or won't like this, like an old granny, or big oversized things, or caterpillar eyebrows.
And when I was reading into, not this necessary article, but this trend that was going on, there are influencers that are gathering statistics based on polling from men. What trends do they like which trends do they like the most? Which trends do they like the least? And they're promoting it to the people on their social media and the people that they influence to dress with the things the men like the least. So,
yes, and I was just looking at what's next, and yes, so things that aren't attractive to men, things that women say make them feel good for themselves. They're not dressing for men, but apparently they're not dressing for any kind of aesthetic either, just to look bad. Man Repeller brand has influenced a number of millennial women. Now, young Gen Z women have discover the trend and are bringing it back to the forefront of fashion culture. Put simply, a man repeller outfit is designed to avoid unwanted male attention and is considered to be not traditionally attractive to the male gaze. A stupid term, first coined by Laura Mulvey in 1975. It's often characterized by long skirts, baggy silhouettes, and details like big, bulky sunglasses.
Yeah, it's very interesting as well because women are at their peak value between 19 and 24.
Peak value.
Well, peak value for trying to find like a husband or something like that.
When they have the best chance.
Let's
just say.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is older women aren't embracing this trend as much as younger women. So it's making the competition market for older women, it's actually giving them an advantage. And I think they're promoting it as well because of that. They're not actually dressing like that. They're dressing much more sophisticated. Well, it's the younger women that are taking this trend. So it's giving an opening for older women to...
And I remember in Vancouver, you would comment on, like, you didn't understand why all these young women were wearing these giant baggy jeans and giant baggy sweatshirt. So it's been around for a while.
Well, I thought they were just shopping at the secondhand store. I would go to the secondhand store very often, but you can dress well for the secondhand store. But it was like they were dressing bad
on purpose.
Yeah. Even for the secondhand store.
And a lot of girls do that. And they think they look great, and they think that they're doing something by trying to repel men. But I mean, they'll reach their 30s or 40s and realize that they're alone, and because of following trends, they literally repelled any available men to them to form a life with.
When you dress like that as well, you're very rarely going to get compliments and men approaching you. So then when they do dress up, on that rare occasion, they're very awkward and they're very put off by a man approaching them. So that sends the wrong signal to men. Because men
and then maybe if it's someone that doesn't want to attract a man, it's fine. I don't know. But how you dress does, unfortunately or fortunately, say a lot about you, your mental state, your physical state, etc. I do think that outward appearances reflect your inward, how you are doing inside as well. So what does this mean about this generation that just wants to look bad on purpose?
Yeah. Okay.
Why?
And the last...
And because going back to the video I did yesterday, they keep being fed propaganda. And I mean, of course, Chaperone, who I talked about yesterday, is a perfect example of someone trying to do all they can. Oh my God.
She's dressing like I thought she was a transgender person.
She dresses in drag on purpose.
Like ugly transgender person.
Support the community and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. And they're doing it because the propaganda continues to be there for feminism, for destroying the best years of your life, and for living a lonely, miserable life in the end.
Well, by the time they wake up to the lies of feminism, it's almost too late to have a child and other things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I woke up almost too late to it because, if you don't know, I used to be like a raging liberal and like progressive, and I was all for it and supporting the community and had all these crazy ideas. I never really agreed with feminism, but that was the thing that got me out of it, by saying, okay, why do people keep trying to hammer feminism on me? And then when I started to realize that it was all lies, basically, and that it wasn't to my benefit, that I was losing a lot of my best years to trying to chase, the best job and the best this, and seeing just for myself and being just self-interested, that didn't benefit me at all. And also, curiously, going back to the drinking thing, right when I stopped drinking was when I started to realize all of these, things that I had just been blindly following and propagandized about.
Well, and that was the thing. When I stopped drinking as well, this is when I began to wake up. I was always non-political. So I would say I had a lot of conservative tendencies just naturally. I would do jiu-jitsu, MMA. I would always have physical jobs, things like this. But when I stopped drinking, I started seeing what was going on politically, and that really woke me up. And then you had made your transition into conservatism, and you were really hammering me with the talking points. And I was like, I don't think that's true. Let me look into it. And then I looked into it, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Yeah, because I was already kind of fully out of it by the time we really got together, and I kept trying to tell him, you have to be interested in the news, you have to be interested in politics, all these things are happening. And then when the pandemic happened, I started to agree more and more with Trump, and you would be like, why are you agreeing with Trump? And he used to make fun of me and call me baby Trump.
Well, and
for
we
being
have to realize
so hard line about certain
things. We lived
things.
in Canada as well, and Canada has a hard line on Trump. That's why they're able to run their current election off campaigning against Trump rather than their opponents. And what woke me, the final things that woke me up was getting sober, but then when the jibby jab, they were trying to give that thing to me, I was already kind of aware, but I really started looking at statistics and what was going on, and I said, no way, this is a psyop, they're doing something.
And I also started telling you, no.
And then the last thing was Trump because you kept telling me, and I was like, well, I don't know. He's got a big mouth, but I started looking into all the things they were saying about him online rather than through the Canadian media, and I realized it was lie after lie after lie. Now, I didn't agree with him on everything, but the way they were painting this man wasn't, and his policies especially, I actually ended up agreeing with a lot of his policies.
Yeah, and that was the thing, like the realizing how many lies are told. And just because if you don't have the wherewithal to go research them all, you just kind of believe it because for the longest time, mainstream media was always right and they would never lie because they're unbiased. And then when you realize the biases, you really wake up to everything.
And let's bring it back to Gen Z here. And they are revenge quitting. And this is the opposite of quiet quitting.
Yes. 3 reasons why Gen Z is revenge quitting at work by a psychologist, don't really care. Job loyalty is no longer given, and perhaps with good reason.
Oh, wait. Why don't we explain what quiet quitting is and revenge quitting first?
Sure.
So I'll take quiet quitting, you take revenge quitting.
Sure.
Okay. So quiet quitting was a trend that was happening in, I say, a lot of Western cultures, but especially the United States and Canada. Where people would quietly quit. They wouldn't say anything. They would just not show up for work one day, and they wouldn't call their boss. They would just totally ghost their job.
Minimum.
And then the second part of that, there was another way to quiet quit, where if you needed to keep your job, you would do the absolute minimum. You would come in late, leave early, things like this. You would really push the boundaries to what was acceptable. You would attempt to work from home. You would have sick notes, everything that would make you a bad employee.
And it also came with all of these, socialist and for the workers ideas saying that why would you ever make any more effort than the one that is minimally required of you if you're not getting every single thing you want from your job? And the whole thing about merit or trying to improve or better yourself was thrown out the window.
Yeah, but it was also interesting because they had the exact same trend in China at the exact same time, and it was called laying down flat. So quiet quitting and laying down flat were very similar in nature, but en masse, people weren't going out to work and driving the Chinese economy forward. But in both cultures, the dream of home ownership and starting a family began to get out of reach for a lot of people. And without those motivating factors in a capitalist society, why are people going to embrace capitalism?
Yeah.
They're not, because those are the things you really want most. And also, even if you can't afford a home in a capitalist society, if you're paying it off for the rest of your life, are you really even owning that house?
Yes. The whole credit system to me is insane, and the mortgage system is insane.
Why don't you explain revenge quitting now?
Yes, so revenge quitting is basically doing the exact opposite. So as you leave, as you decide to quit, you essentially air out as much dirty laundry.
I'll be right back. I'm going to use the washroom real quick.
You basically air out as much negative things you can about the company or workplace you work for. And you just one day decide to say, okay, bye, and then try to get as much information, negative information as you can from the place you worked. And it's not as hard. I've had jobs where you end up knowing a lot about the places you work for. So most people will have something they can air out, at least about colleagues or about information that they shouldn't be outside. So now they're using this trend to stick it to the system once again. Because, and it is understandable that the job market and the way lately life has been going, especially for younger generations, and I include myself in that, hasn't been ideal, and it is really hard day to day. But let me just quickly read the comments. Well, Guy's back, but let me just quickly read the comments. Sounds good, better. Thank you for letting us know, Maui and Jax. Diplomatic Jax says, yeah, I thought the same thing of Guy. She dresses like a metabot. Chaperone.
Oh, yeah.
Maui Yoga and Wellness says it's a contradiction. They want to not be seen, but with this kind of dressing, they end up calling more, they deep down, they just want to get more attention when they dress in these baggy things. They of course do it to, be seen as different and interesting and not that girl, and I'm not a pick-me, whatever. But yes, so revenge quitting.
And I just want to say something about revenge quitting. This is not a good trend. Laying down flat or quiet quitting, if you're going to take one of these two options, that's the much better option, because you're burning yourself for future job prospects and future relationships. I very often work for somebody that and then that boss got a job somewhere else in a completely different company.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended things on great terms. So
yeah,
that
you always want that.
Yeah, but people don't always need references these days. They're using their friends as references and lying on their resumes. So maybe they don't feel like they need those references. But when you have an interpersonal relationship with somebody and you do meet them in the future, very often you can call on that.
And in Mexico, usually, in Latin America, I think usually that's kind of more how it still works. Like it still works in the more old-fashioned way. But being a job seeker in Canada several times myself, the system there is insane and it's broken. And I do agree with that the job market, the job system is crazy. You send out a resume, you have to send it to at least 180 postings to get two back. Everything is checked through algorithms and AI. They look for keywords on your resume. If you don't know how to put them or where to place them, you're basically, nobody's ever going to look at, like no human is ever going to look at your application. So the system is completely broken. What they look for in employees is also completely broken. So I do understand the difficulties with having a job, keeping a job, being employed in the States and Canada at least.
And I would say in Canada, they are desperate for good workers because I worked in a pretty high profile location as far as bars go, and I was a security man at a door, but I was always well composed, well spoken. When I needed to kick people out, I could always talk them out, and I never really made a scene. But you had a lot of business people coming into these bars. So I worked in a lot of other industries I wasn't qualified for just because they liked the way I carried myself within the bar. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of corporate headquarters for mining in Vancouver, and a lot of mining executives would come in, so they offered me a job in mining. Then I got into the movie industry. Somebody talked to me at the door, and then I did security for the movie industry. Then I did also camera work for the movie industry and other things like that.
You start building up on those people you meet, and you actually start gaining skills and get better and better, and through merit, you actually get somewhere.
And when I'm also saying, when you're not lying down flat or doing the minimal at work, sometimes other people see you and they offer you jobs.
Yes.
If you're a hard worker and you're well put together.
But it's also this, I think, once again, going back to the feminist propaganda, at least with women, because you're told so many times that you have to get a job, you have to go to college, you have to do great, you have to be the CEO of who knows what corporation. You start getting these jobs that are soul-sucking, they're horrible. You see maybe friends having kids, or you see, I don't know, kids on social media. You start rethinking your life. But by the time you can escape the rat race, because you're always thinking, well, I need more money. Well, I need to be able to go on vacations. Well, I need to be able to achieve this or that. You stay in that horrible soul-sucking job to the point where now you feel the only out is to revenge quit or to lay down flat.
Yeah, I would like to say something about, like, there's these two dynamically opposed views, and it's the liberal view where women should go after their careers, and if they get married, they should keep their career. And then conservatives say, well, no, they should stay home and raise their kids. Yeah, I believe they should raise their kids, but in today's society, very often both parents need jobs, especially if you're not in a upper class come from an upper class family. So it's almost impossible for that traditional conservative model. So I really think conservatives in general need to come up with a new model, and that is the more traditional model. Before women stayed home and just raised kids, what they did was they had an at-home business, and they developed that. And especially with the internet today, you can develop that at-home business.
But the problem with that, just quickly, another one of my passions for a while was researching into MLMs.
I'm not talking MLMs.
I was just going there. I was researching into MLMs, and a lot of these stay-at-home moms get sucked into these horrible pyramid schemes where they get taken advantage of. They never make any money. They have their own business, but they really don't. So, I mean, yes, not that, but maybe even building some sort of entrepreneurial, pursuit with the husband, and maybe he's out working, but at the same time they're both planning to build something together that is of both of them, and it's like a third or fourth baby that they take care of and try to grow and try to be enterprising with that while one or both of them are working, and then slowly one or both of them can get out of the traditional rat race.
Yeah, having a small side business that the husband and wife work on together, that eventually hopefully the wife can transition and do that more full-time at home where she raises the kid, may be a new good model to have the family start actually raising their kids again, rather than the government and the schooling system.
Yes, I'm all for homeschooling. There's no way I'll ever put any of my kids into traditional schools.
Well, that was part of the reason we started to do this YouTube thing as well, so we could work from home.
We love films, movie making, documentaries, politics, social stuff. But one of the advantages was that we kind of built an infrastructure to do this before we kind of dropped everything and just started doing it. But the whole reason was to eventually use it as that model.
Start a family and
make that model work.
Yeah, able to be around the child all day and have influence on them.
Yes.
But
raise it properly.
Let's go into the next story here.
Okay, hold on. Oh, the one I did in Spanish. So yes, those were just kind of topics we wanted to touch on, not really like super news, but hold on, let me see if anybody said anything. Oh, lots of comments. Before we move on from this, I gotta remember to read comments first.
And we are trying to do more social commentary because I felt like we were giving the same opinions because they were different stories, but it was in the same kind of vein. So we're putting more socially adapt stories where we can talk about larger social issues like feminism, gender ideology, things like this. So also taking time to read more comments. So if you do want to comment, we're most likely going to read it on the show.
Yes. So Diplomatic Jack says, a few years ago, I was told that Americans were like workaholics. Was that the case in Canada too? Do you think these new woke movements have already eliminated that culture?
No, completely because I lived and worked in both, and I completely disagree with that. Americans, I thought were workaholics until I moved to Canada. And those are true workaholics because the dollar's worth a lot less. Things cost a lot more. Every Canadian has a minimum of 2 jobs. Yeah, the amount of taxes that coming off. When I wanted to flee Canada and move to Mexico, I started working 4 jobs. That was 110 hours a week.
And I was doing 2, sometimes 3, just so we could get savings and,
Yeah, so I would very often talk to people at my jobs to see how many jobs they had because I had the most and I was working 110 hours a week.
Yep.
So it was kind of like bragging status for me at the time.
There was no sleeping.
But a lot of people had 3 jobs and I was surprised with that.
Yeah, I have friends that have 1, 2, like back in Canada, 1 or 2, even if it's a side business, even if it's only during the weekends. It's basically everybody I know doesn't just do one thing. And then at the same time, while we were thinking of coming here and like getting everything ready and, production stuff, company, so we could do this. And so we could get enough, savings to leave. I was also working 2 or 3 jobs at one point. I've worked 4 as well, like before. It's very common. So
even before I started working 4 jobs, I was always working 2. I was teaching jiu-jitsu in the daytime and I was a bouncer at nighttime. Mm-hmm. So, but then when I needed to leave the country and I needed to get money together, it killed me to work those 4 jobs, and I did it for an extended period of time. Yep. But that's how we were able to buy the equipment and safely financially leave the country.
Yes, and not be scared of dropping everything.
Yeah.
So it took 4 or 5 years to actually get it going and leave.
And it really delayed our life plans for children and stuff because all that money we would have wanted to start a family with in Canada, and we did it to flee the country and come to Mexico and hopefully start a small
and rebuild
production company where we could have a life with the child.
Yes. Or more than
But continue.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Working, do Americans work?
That I don't know if in Mexico, at least when I left, people work this one job, but they stay very long hours. In Canada, yes, the 9 to 5s are usually respected, but because of that, you have more opportunity to go, get another one. And it is true that even if you make a lot of money at the end of the day with taxes and rent and buying a house is impossible. Another one of the reasons we decided to leave.
You can pay up to 60 to 70% taxes in Canada. Yeah. So you're only keeping $3 to $4 out of $10 you make.
Yes.
Like in Mexico, it's completely different. People work a lot harder here, but they hustle and they make their own business, even if they have to stand on a street corner and sell things. Mm-hmm. And in Canada, it's completely corporatized.
Yes.
People are not entrepreneurially.
They can't be independent.
They can't be motivated to make their own business because the government is going to take all the money from that business.
Yes.
In the U.S., it's a much more like Mexico, where people still have the entrepreneurial spirit. But in Mexico, it's even more than the States. It's how the States used to be when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yes, another one of the reasons is because it would have been impossible to have any kind of life staying in Canada.
Yeah.
Just buying a house is impossible. Getting a car is impossible.
Paying a rent was almost impossible in Canada.
There were days when, like months, where at the end it was like, well, we only have this much for groceries because we have to pay the rent. We were paying $3,000 in rent at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of that, paying taxes and groceries are insane. Like one trip to the grocery store was what, about $250, $300.
And then if you need, we had lived downtown, so we didn't need a car because we were able to walk, but we did own a car. But the price of having that car was absolutely insane.
Yes.
There's one insurance company in Canada, so they have a monopoly, and the insurance is some of the highest in the world. And then gas prices are some of the highest in the world.
Everything's
and
the highest
if
in
you
the
need
world.
to fix your car, it's not like in Mexico where people have their own businesses and will fix your car for cheap. You're having to bring it primarily to a dealership, and even the independent mechanics are charging an arm and a leg just to get the oil changed for a car.
Yes.
Could cost up to $300.
Yes, Canadian, but still, I mean, that's a lot. And then Erika Cardenas says, great opinions on today's society. Keep going. Thank you so much. And excelente. Thank you. Greetings from Sonora. Oh, hot. And stay safe as well.
Okay, let's go through a couple more of these stories before we go to the green monster. That's RUMBLE.
Which we can't mention. We didn't put a link down below today because we realized YouTube might be angry at us for doing that. So as of now, we will just say the green monster. And if you don't know where it is, it's our name. Just search for it at the green monster. But yes, Fencer, I spoke about this in Spanish a lot to clip it, but Fencer takes knee in protest against transgender opponent.
Yeah, and this goes into a lot of different things where women are finally standing up for themselves because they're losing scholarships, they're losing rankings, they're losing the ability to safely compete in sports. And it was amazing to me when this trend first started happening where transgender athletes were crossing over to sports. One of the very first sports was MMA, and this was Fallon Fox, and she fractured her girl's skull in the ring, and nobody was really saying anything until kind of Joe Rogan stood up and he finally said something. But even that, like even with Joe Rogan's reach, that case really didn't get as much attention as Leah Thomas, which was the swimmer at Penn State. She was competing and winning all kinds of medals as a woman, but when she was originally a man and competing against men, she could barely hold her spot, his spot on the team. So the fact that there was more outrage over a swimmer than an MMA fighter that was fracturing other women's skulls, I just think overall women have fought so hard to be able to compete in their own sports. They really need to fight to defend that. But the issue with that is most women are adopt a progressive liberal ideology. So and part of that progressive liberal ideology is to defend trans people. So they don't know what to do.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Yes, and I mean, I did mention that. I forgot to mention the whole Fallon Fox thing, but I did say that there's a lot of issues when you allow biological men with their biological advantages to go up against females, women. And we are seeing also a lot more competitors standing up against it, female competitors standing up against having to go up against males. But at the same time, it was very difficult for the longest time because they would lose everything.
Oh, yeah.
Because the associations were also kind of in cahoots with very progressive and trans activists within their ranks, and with WPATH, which I will eventually make a video on because I really want to. There's the association that is a complete fraud, and a lot of information has come out about it. But they couldn't also speak up, and the associations kind of had to continue with the lie that biological males could be in women's sports. Thanks to Trump, it's kind of changing. The conversation is changing. People are getting braver.
Yep.
Not just thanks to Trump. I think mostly thanks to activists like Riley Gaines,
and conservatism,
like Billboard Chris.
Because progressive liberalism went off the deep end and lost all moral structure. So people are really turning conservatism, and it's making them question their traditional liberal values and where do the morals come from. So, but I think that's the last story we'll do on YouTube today, just because I don't want to go to 11:30 like yesterday. Even Walker and Rafa were falling asleep.
Shouldn't we really quickly talk about Blake Lively since she's on the cover?
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know what you wanted to say about that. But
Some
I know
of the
you
other
wanted to
headlines
say
were the Minecraft movie's coming out with Jason Momoa. I really like Jason Momoa, but man, he makes bad decisions as far as movies go.
Yes.
And this seems like another bad decision. The reviews, they weren't letting any early reviewers watch the movie because even the studio knew it was bad. Now people are beginning to watch the movie and they're talking about it. It's one of the worst movies of the year. It's on the level even worse than Snow White.
But Blake Lively.
Okay, Blake Lively.
Because we put her on the cover and we didn't talk about her. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are reportedly skipping the 2025 Met Gala. She's not a Kardashian. And I mean, the Met Gala is not until September, but you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, I brought this in to talk about cancellation. I remember when the left was canceling conservatives. You're seeing now conservatives that they have control of the culture, at least in the U.S. There's the same thing's kind of happening. There's this conservative council culture that's coming up. It's not quite as bad as the liberals were. If you said one thing out of line or something that was politically conservative, you were called far right, a racist, homophobic, all kinds of other things. But I will keep an eye on this just because this is the first budding thing where cancel culture's rising its ugly head in conservatism. So I'm sure it's going to get a lot worse. And as conservatives realize they have more and more power, what is it?
No, I was going to say it's interesting that the person, as you're saying, conservatives kind of brought this up, even though Baldoni is a raging feminist and he annoys the hell out of everybody. But the one person that kind of brought this to the forefront and got a lot of people kind of introduced to this world of conservative talking points and stuff was Candace Owens.
Oh, yeah.
And she got also excoriated for doing it. They were saying that she was trying to build a pipeline through the Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds thing towards, ultra-right, far-right radicalism of women.
Maybe
but it's just because she was talking honestly about things.
Maybe we'll end the conversation here because there's a few more points I want to make about this, but I can't make them on YouTube. So we're going to head over to RUMBLE. That's the Green Monster.
The link is not down below, but just look up, we're Nat and the Guy on there, so you can just find us like that. But thank you, YouTube, and we'll see you over there. Thank you for all the likes tonight and for the support and for all your comments, and we will continue to read them on RUMBLE or the Green Monster or the free speech platform.
Okay, we'll see you over there.
Yes, let me try to end this. Oh, I didn't say to let us know if the stream came back up, but I guess they won't.
Okay, I'm gonna head over to Rumble.